So the plenary session is going to begin with a presentation titled Ontario Mobilization and Engagement Model of Community Policing, presented by the Superintendent of York Regional Police, Paul Pedersen, and Community Services Manager of Safe City Mississauga, our own Ashley Lyons. So I'll invite you up now, and we'll try to get started now so we don't get too far behind.
Well, you don't have to clap. I haven't started yet. Thanks very much. It really is a pleasure to be here talking about community policing. As said, I work for York Regional Police, but this Ontario model of community mobilization and community policing, this engagement model, was created when I was part of the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police Community Policing Committee. So this is a model that's presented or been developed to go to all police services throughout the province, and it has gone to all police services throughout the province. But I think, you know, in the very brief time that I've got today, I just want to stress that when we were developing this model, and as this model is moving out, we really see it as a diagnostic tool that works just as well for police services as it does for community members. And that's why I think a session like this that has community members, community agencies, social agencies, and police officers together is fantastic. You know, I think, just saying on a break, it wasn't too long ago, a police officer and a social worker co-facilitating was unheard of. And Ashley and I pulled this together, so I guess we can work together. So there was a community policing model before. We were asking ourselves at the committee, why do we need to change if there was one? And I think, and there are some police officers here, I think if I were to ask the police officers, did you even know there was a community policing model before? Most of the officers in this province would say, I didn't know that. And certainly community members didn't know that. So we needed to change it. This session today, we're going to talk about the new model. There's some training that are going out to all of our recruit officers. And why is that important? Because as community members and community agencies, all of our new recruits are learning this language, so you can learn the language as well to work with them. And then I turn it all over to Ashley, who's going to talk about effective crime prevention strategies and specifically how to implement this at a local level. So, you know, we asked the question, why do we change? Well, look at it. It's ugly. You know, you want something that looks a little better than that. But the reality, the real thing is, when you look at this thing, it's a puzzle. And so when we talk to officers about, do you understand the model, they're confused by the model. Well, it's a puzzle. Puzzles are confusing. The other piece of it is it really talks about things in abstract. Things like police service re-engineering, police learning, community development, things that aren't really tactile things that an officer can implement on a day-to-day basis. So while this thing set good groundwork for the model that, by the way, is in your handouts, we still recognized it was time to change it. So some of the things that are changing it is this new language, mobilization. We're hearing community mobilization more and more and more. Something I think everybody in this room recognizes as well, this notion of crime prevention through social development, and that, you know, and I heard it when you were talking about your hero awards as well, that programs that engage young children at an early age is true crime prevention, because that's where it starts. It isn't just wait until, you know, they're older and throw them in jail. It certainly isn't wait and just, you know, put locks on our houses and alarms. Not that there isn't a place for those crime prevention strategies as well. It's just this whole notion that crime prevention through social development works, and that police and social agencies and community members all have a role in that. Ultimately, we talk about joint problem solving, and I'll touch on that just a bit. And at the end of the day, we wanted it to be meaningful to police officers. We developed this, a fellow by the name of Dr. Hugh Russell, probably known to many people in this room, was really one of the drivers for our committee. Developed it through sessions in the internet. We involve police officers, we involve non-police officers, ministry, police college. Overall, there was over 50 contributors that built the model. Then we went to the consultation piece, our OACP zones, individual police services, different community groups. And then at the end of the day, what are we talking about? We're talking about community policing with a purpose. Not just this thing that doesn't matter, but something that we can use. So I call it, and we call it, a diagnostic tool. The tool first asks, what is our job? And again, a conversation I was having on a break. What's the police role? What's the community's role? Can they work together, or are they separate? One of the things I talk about as well, and I think is really important for everybody in the room to recognize, is there is no such thing as one community, right? Community encompasses a whole bunch of different things, and then this model contemplates a whole bunch of different police functions. I won't spend much time on this. This is one of the ones when I talk to a group of police officers and I start talking about what's our job, they're all real comfortable on that hard side, you know, that arresting side. Every police officer likes that, you know, we're law enforcement officers. When we get over on the other side and start talking about community engagement, that's when they start throwing rocks at me. And I'm generalizing, but that wasn't and hasn't traditionally been an area that we've worked in. So this talks about, this little 4x4 matrix talks about being reactive, things we have to do reactively, being proactive, finding our grounds through legal legislation, and then also social responsibility. Again, talking about who is the community, of course, for most of us, we think of community and we think of that geographic community, the neighborhood where we live. And that's a good starting point. But I sometimes ask, if you think in your neighborhood, do you know the neighbors on either side of you? Maybe the answer is yes. Now, you know, one house down, not so much. 2 or 3 houses down, there's a disconnect. But how about communities of interest? You know, for us police officers, we've got a community where there's a certain understanding, a certain bond. We know cultural communities cross the world and have links and relationships worldwide. Similarly with religious communities. And then within communities, there's also demographics, you know, our seniors and our youth. And going back to youth, it is not just one homogeneous group. There's a whole bunch of little subsets of that. So when we talk about community policing, I think you can't talk about it until you understand what community are you talking about. So this is the new model, and again, it's in your handout. As you can see, it's way better because it's in color. For the officers here, you know, it looks a lot like our use of force model, right? And that's intentional because police officers across the province understand when they're allowed to use their gun and when they're allowed to use pepper spray and stuff like that through a model that looks like this. So we thought, let's make this look just the same so that we've got some uptake. When you look at this model, it's divided into quadrants and again, colored zones. And in each of those zones, there's some functions that are contemplated as being the responsibility of police, and then there's some functions that are contemplated as being the responsibility of community members. I'll very quickly just talk about this as a geographical community first, because that's the easy way to understand this, right? So let's imagine that we've got a high crime area or an area where there's a high need for police presence. That's up in the upper, well, right where I'm standing, the red zone. So in that zone there, our first concern as police officer is bringing some safety back to the community, right? So you see there, police-led safety initiatives in the ring, and you see things like strategic enforcement, intelligence-led policing. This is the stuff that most police officers, and I would also suggest most community members, expect police to do. But what you'll also see there is social development measures up in the red zone, because we have to get to those underlying roots. What are the causal factors that led to the crime in that area? And we know that that's a very complicated very, very complicated question and very complicated answers, but things like, are there before and after school care? Is there a literacy issue in the community? Whole bunch of things we have to start thinking about there before we can start moving. And then the model looks, again with arrows, it looks like an action model. So what we're trying to do is make the community safe. We move down to the yellow area where we can now start seeing some mobilization from the community, some community members stepping up to take lead. And we know even in our most impoverished communities, there are still strong, strong leaders. It's just they have to feel safe enough to get out from behind the bars on their windows and contribute. So this, for police officers, then becomes our job to help with that mobilization, help get community members together, and start dealing with some crime prevention initiatives. Once we've got some community members mobilized, it moves over to the blue zone. Now we've got some consultation where we can actually sit together and carry on some conversations about what should we do, what shouldn't we do. Our ultimate goal is to push it all the way to the green zone, which is depicted as a safe community. And I know Mississauga is one of the safest communities in the world, right? Next to York Region, but it's a very, very safe community. So for the most part, we're up here, right? Now what you see there is community-led safety initiatives, not police-led safety initiatives. The police officers have a role, and maybe that role is education, but this is where all of those crime prevention through environmental design factors really come out, because now people can start trimming their bushes, putting up the appropriate lights and stuff like that because they feel safe enough to do that. So very quickly, that's the work around the model, and I'm running out of time, right? These are the things we talk about, the roles for police officers, and the police officers have to learn new roles. In the center of that model, you'll see police and community together doing a little bit of diagnosis, assess, plan, and act. This is a little checklist that we talk about, indicators that there may be some work to do in a neighborhood. This is the kind of thing that we expect a police officer and a community member to sit down and discuss. Is the presence of these things there? Does that mean we need to do something about it? And more of those checklists that our officers are being taught, really, really helpful for that diagnosis piece. At the end, this model has gone out to every police services in the province of Ontario. This model is being taught at police college. It's also being taught to supervisors. So it's language that our police officers are starting to use, and it's, I would suggest, a real opportunity to integrate community policing throughout an organization and out to the community as well. With that, I'll turn it over to Ashley Lyons.
Thank you. So I am discussing effective crime prevention strategies and community implementation. And as discussed by Superintendent Pedersen, the new model relies heavily on community. And for this model to work, community must be present in at least 3 of the 4 categories. If our community is not ready or prepared to take action on an issue, this model will not be successful in mobilizing and engaging them in a crime prevention strategy. Community readiness is key. The Ontario Police Service Act states that crime prevention is the first duty of police services. And while this may be true, the community policing model emphasizes the importance of community mobilization, working together, and using effective crime prevention strategies. Keeping in mind the importance of community and community readiness, how can we effectively implement crime prevention strategies and work towards mobilizing and engaging a community? Crime presents one of the most significant challenges for cities across Canada and within Ontario. The attractiveness, economic competitiveness, social cohesion, and community spirit in neighborhoods can diminish because of crime. However, cities can combat these challenges if they are mobilized, engaged, and working together in active partnership with the community. People's sense of insecurities tend to be based in part on their perceptions about crime, whether or not they reflect actual levels of crime. And they're influenced by many factors. They depend on things like the type and quality of sources of information about crime, who and where are they getting it from, on their own personal experiences. What has happened to them to make them feel a certain way? Perhaps it's their own sense of insecurity, or perhaps it's a social or physical vulnerability. In a survey conducted by the National Crime Prevention Council, 73% of Canadians placed more importance on crime prevention measures than they did on criminal justice measures. And while police and the criminal justice system have been primarily responsible for public safety and preventing crime, public safety is everyone's concern, and everybody must do their part to contribute to the development of a safe and cohesive living environment. Now, effective crime prevention strategies are only effective because they are using an integrated approach that is mobilizing and engaging a community that is ready, and also because they are attached to the root causes of crime. Strategies like community crime prevention, which tend to focus at a local level and seek to directly influence intervening makeup such as social cohesion and community atmosphere. As discussed by Superintendent Pedersen, one of the services under the strategy could be better community policing. Or supporting our young people, like in Safe City Mississauga's Crossroads Youth Academy program, whereby it seeks to directly influence those intervening makeups through education and awareness. That's in partnership with Peel Regional Police, the Bank of Canada, Peel Paramedics Association, and Dixie Bloor Neighborhood Center. Then there is situational crime prevention, which involves taking simple, common sense steps to reduce or eliminate opportunities for crime. If you reduce the opportunities for crime to occur and you increase the risks of detection for criminals, you will reduce the rewards for crime. Supt, and for those of you who don't know what that is, crime prevention through environmental design, is an effective service under the strategy like is done in Safe City Mississauga's Neighborhood Watch program. And you'll actually get to hear a bit more about that later today in a breakout session with Brittany Wakefield and Constable Tom McKay. Another service example is a project that Safe City Mississauga has been able to undertake this year with assistance from Peel Regional Police, the University of Toronto Mississauga, and the Community Foundation of Mississauga, specifically the Pendle Fund, in which we're analyzing crime statistics that will help to stimulate the implementation of crime prevention programs in vulnerable areas in the city of Mississauga. This analysis will help us to identify what social and neighborhood changes are required in order to reduce crime rates in specific areas according to neighborhood crime findings. Another effective strategy is developmental crime prevention, which focuses on stimulating cognitive development and addressing disruptive social behaviors in children. Safe City Mississauga's Counteract program helps to develop the attributes of respect, responsibility, and ownership in children who have yet to become involved in criminal behavior. This is in partnership with the Boards of Education and Peel Regional Police. As you can tell, Peel Regional Police really help us out a lot. The fourth strategy is crime prevention through social development. Typically, social development strategies in Canadian communities are typically focused in three areas. The individual level, which focuses on addressing existing shortfalls that may place individuals at risk of involvement in crime. Then there's the family level, which seeks to strengthen family capacity. An example of this could be parenting programs. And finally, community, which seeks to strengthen local capacity to prevent crime. Safe City Mississauga's Aspire program, which provides no-cost tutoring services to children living in an underserviced neighborhood by high school students and university students from UTM, aims to target all of these social development strategies by including all aspects, from involvement from the individual through the child and tutor, through the family with parent involvement, and through the community with partnerships with the teachers, the principals, and as well as involvement from the local residents where the Aspire location is. Again, all of these are excellent examples of effective crime prevention strategies attached to the root causes of crime, working together with mobilized partners from police, citizens, school boards, businesses, and government bodies. Now, knowing the effective crime prevention strategies is one thing, however, successfully implementing them is a whole nother thing. The success of an integrated approach to crime prevention through one of these strategies depends on the successful mobilization and engagement of a community, as demonstrated through some of the examples I provided. It also depends on the process used to implement it, as well as evaluate it. It involves making strategic choices, setting objectives, and developing appropriate plans of action. To meet these objectives, the community must be ready and willing to work through a number of stages of the crime prevention process. beginning with identifying a leader and vision. Local crime prevention organizations or your local police services crime prevention unit are typically most strategically placed to assume a strong leadership role. They can do this by mobilizing and engaging individuals and organizations who can contribute their expertise and resources to resolving problems of crime. In addition, engagement must include direct involvement in the development and implementation stages. Key partners can include police services, municipal government, school board, health and social services, business groups, community agencies, researchers, the media, and of course, obviously, the public. Now, as partners become engaged, a community diagnosis must be completed, and this involves compiling information from all partners and taking into account the views and experiences of the public. A good diagnosis can identify the risk factors and help to identify the range of interventions which can be used to respond to those problems effectively. Once the diagnosis is complete, and a thorough one can definitely take some time, the main task is to develop a plan and course of action. It requires making choices about priorities and deciding on how to achieve the objectives. Begin by identifying the goals and objectives of the initiatives as well as its intended outcomes. Identify and target the resources necessary, which includes identifying different types of expertise as well as, of course, financial resources. For successful implementation, it is important for partners to be connected, involved, and engaged during the entire process. It's also important to recognize the importance of investing in crime prevention and not to rely solely on volunteer support or donations. Sustainable funding is key for the success of a service, and that doesn't even matter if it's crime prevention or not. Sustainable funding is key. Finally, monitoring and evaluation are both just as important as the other stages of this model, and they're an invaluable tool in allowing you to demonstrate that a strategic, integrated approach can reduce problems of crime. Remember to regularly inform your funders, local stakeholders, the public, and continue to make adjustments or modifications as the community changes over time. Now, of course, with anything, there are bound to be some challenges. I know Superintendent Pedersen does not like the word challenges. So implementing crime prevention strategies effectively is not a simple task, and as I've stated a few times already, the community must be ready. Some challenges that might present themselves can be overcome, but they include such things as difficulty in keeping partners involved and motivated. There may not be enough human capacity for the identified issue at hand, and perhaps there are little or most likely no financial resources available. Community diagnosis is also not simple and can bring with it many challenges as well. People may not initially be willing to share information or data. There may be language or cultural barriers, and some community groups or individuals may be cautious of the police. And while all of these may be true and valid challenges, overcoming them is necessary, and when everybody has an intended purpose and is engaged in the process, those challenges can be overcome. A clear and inclusive vision focused on action that strengthens, and the strength and drive of each group is used to overcome those challenges, and that's a requirement for success. Now, I'd like to provide you with a current example of a community mobilization and engagement project that Safe City Mississauga has undertaken, over the past year, and that is the Counteract Vandalism Committee. Beginning through Safe City Mississauga, as I've already stated, we identified the need for attention to the graffiti problem in Mississauga, and to do this, we identified a clear vision and mission and began to identify and mobilize our partners to begin a discussion on the topic. All partners work together collectively to research and bring our own expertise to complete a diagnostic of the complete graffiti situation in Mississauga. An action plan has been drafted, which looks at all aspects of graffiti, including reporting, removal, awareness and education, and obviously, and of course, most importantly, evaluation. Because of the community's motivation and engagement in this vision and process, we are hoping to begin implementation in 2012. Now, I'd like to close by restating that while all of the information that I've provided to you is effective and the process does work, if you do not get your community ready for the process, this model will not work at all. They have to be ready. But what does community readiness look like? Very simply put, readiness is the degree to which a community is prepared to take action on an issue. Matching an intervention to a community's level of readiness is absolutely essential to increase the potential for success. Using a community readiness model, and there are a variety of them out there that you can find, can help you to determine your community's level of readiness. This knowledge is essential for the development of a successful strategy and intervention. I'd just like to close with a quote that I found recently that I really liked, and it's, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And that's Margaret Mead. She's a famous American anthropologist. Thank you.